You are watching Man's Dark Nature, where true crime actually meets the truth. We cover unsolved murders, reopened cold cases, and those twisted domestic crimes that still haunt families today. No jump scares here or cheap sensationalism, just the dark, uncomfortable facts, backed by solid research and investigation. At 9:28 p.m. on March 3, 2021, Sarah Everard made a decision that should have been completely safe. She decided to walk home from a friend's house in South London, taking the same route she'd walked dozens of times before. She was cautious, she called her boyfriend, she stayed on well-lit main roads, she did everything society tells women to do to stay safe. But Sarah Everard's precautions were worthless against the predator who was hunting her that night. Because the man who kidnapped, raped, and murdered her wasn't hiding in shadows or lurking in alleyways. He was wearing a Metropolitan Police warrant card, carrying handcuffs issued by Scotland Yard, and using the authority of the state itself as his weapon. Wayne Couzens didn't just murder Sarah Everard. He weaponized the entire concept of law enforcement, turning every police interaction into a potential death sentence for vulnerable women. He transformed a badge meant to protect into a tool for predation. This isn't just the story of one woman's murder. This is the story of institutional failure so profound that it handed a sexual predator the ultimate weapon, the power to arrest anyone, anywhere, at any time. This is the story of how the Metropolitan Police created the perfect conditions for a monster to thrive, then acted shocked when he inevitably struck. Welcome to the Sarah Everard case, where a police officer's badge became a hunting license, where institutional negligence enabled sexual predation, and where the very people sworn to protect women instead armed their killer. Sarah Everard was everything society tells women they should be to stay safe. At 33, she was intelligent, cautious, and acutely aware of the dangers that women face simply by existing in public spaces. She was a marketing executive who had built a successful career through hard work and dedication. She had close relationships with family and friends, a loving boyfriend, and plans for a future that seemed bright and promising. Sarah was the kind of person who checked in with loved ones, who stayed on main roads at night, who did everything right according to the safety rules society imposes on women. On the evening of March 3, 2021, Sarah had dinner with friends in Clapham, South London. As the evening wound down, she made the decision that millions of women make every day. She chose to walk home rather than wait for public transport or pay for a taxi. The walk from Clapham to Brixton should have taken Sarah about 50 minutes along well-traveled roads through areas she knew well. She wore bright clothing, carried her phone, and stayed on the A205 South Circular, one of London's busiest roads. At 9:28 p.m., Sarah left her friend's house and began what should have been a routine journey home. She called her boyfriend Josh to let him know she was walking, maintaining the kind of contact that safety-conscious women use to create accountability for their movements. Sarah's route took her past restaurants, shops, and residential areas where other people were present. She wasn't taking shortcuts through isolated areas or making risky decisions about her personal safety. She was simply trying to get home. What Sarah couldn't have known was that Wayne Couzens was prowling South London that night, using his Metropolitan Police warrant card as a weapon to target women. Couzens wasn't responding to calls or conducting legitimate police business. He was hunting. Forensic analysis would later reveal that Couzens had driven over 80 miles from his home in Kent to London that evening, bringing with him police-issued handcuffs, his warrant card, and a rental car that couldn't be traced back to him easily. This wasn't a crime of opportunity. This was premeditated predation using police equipment and authority. At approximately 9:35 p.m., just 7 minutes into her walk, Sarah Everard encountered Wayne Couzens on the A205. Using his police credentials, Couzens convinced Sarah that she was under arrest and that she needed to comply with his instructions. Sarah, like most law-abiding citizens, trusted the badge and the authority it represented. She had no reason to believe that a police officer would harm her, no framework for understanding that the very institution meant to protect her could be weaponized against her. Wayne Couzens wasn't born a killer, he was systematically enabled by the Metropolitan Police to become one. Understanding how requires examining the institutional culture that recruited him, trained him, and armed him with the tools he would use to commit murder. Couzens joined the Metropolitan Police in 2018 after transferring from the Civil Nuclear Constabulary, where he had worked guarding nuclear facilities. His background check and vetting process apparently found nothing disqualifying about his history or psychological profile. But forensic psychologists who studied Couzens after his arrest identified clear patterns of escalating sexual predation that should have disqualified him from police service. His behavior exhibited classic signs of what experts call authority-facilitated sexual assault, using professional position to access and control victims. Couzens' colleagues at the Metropolitan Police knew him by a revealing nickname, the Rapist. This wasn't a casual joke or friendly ribbing, it was recognition of behavior patterns that his fellow officers found disturbing enough to comment on, but not disturbing enough to report. The nickname reveals the toxic culture within police ranks where sexual predation is treated as personality quirk rather than criminal behavior. Officers who witnessed Couzens' concerning behavior toward women chose to make jokes rather than file complaints or seek intervention. Internal Metropolitan Police communications and witness statements revealed that Couzens had made multiple female colleagues uncomfortable with his behavior. He made inappropriate sexual comments, engaged in unwanted touching, and displayed the kind of boundary violations that forensic psychologists recognize as precursors to sexual violence. Despite these red flags, Couzens was assigned to the Parliamentary and Diplomatic Protection Command, an elite unit responsible for protecting high-profile government officials and foreign dignitaries. This assignment gave him access to firearms, specialized arrest powers, and enhanced authority that he would ultimately use to facilitate Sarah's murder. The Parliamentary and Diplomatic Protection Command isn't just any police assignment, it's considered one of the most prestigious postings in British law enforcement, requiring enhanced vetting and psychological evaluation. The fact that Couzens not only passed the screening but thrived in the role reveals systematic failures in police assessment and oversight. His duties with the unit required him to work varying shifts, often alone, with minimal supervision. He had access to police vehicles, equipment, and locations throughout London. Most dangerously, his role gave him the authority to conduct arrests and detentions with limited oversight or accountability. Forensic analysis of Couzens' behavior in the months leading up to Sarah's murder revealed a clear pattern of escalating sexual violence that his police colleagues either ignored or failed to recognize as dangerous. Just 3 days before murdering Sarah, Couzens had exposed himself to female staff at a McDonald's restaurant in Kent. This incident of sexual exhibitionism represents a classic escalation in predatory behavior, the kind of warning sign that should have triggered immediate investigation and suspension. Instead, the incident went unreported to police supervisors, allowing Couzens to continue his duties with full access to police powers and equipment. The failure to connect his off-duty criminal behavior with his on-duty access to vulnerable populations represents institutional negligence of the highest order. Psychological profiling revealed that Couzens had likely been using his police authority to target women for months or years before Sarah's murder. His confidence in using official procedures to kidnap Sarah suggests prior experience manipulating police powers for criminal purposes. When Wayne Couzens approached Sarah Everard on the A205, he wasn't just committing kidnapping, he was weaponizing the entire concept of lawful authority. His actions transformed every future police interaction into a potential threat for women across Britain. CCTV footage captured the moment when Couzens used his warrant card and police-issued handcuffs to convince Sarah that she was under arrest. The footage shows Sarah complying with his instructions, displaying the law-abiding behavior that society expects from citizens when confronted by police authority. Forensic reconstruction of the abduction revealed that Couzens had carefully planned every aspect of the encounter. He used a rental car to avoid detection, brought police equipment to establish credibility, and chose a location where his actions would appear legitimate to casual observers. Witnesses later testified that the interaction looked like a routine police arrest. Couzens displayed his warrant card, used official police language, and followed procedures that made his actions appear legitimate. Sarah's compliance wasn't naivety, it was the rational response to what appeared to be lawful authority. After convincing Sarah to enter his vehicle, Couzens drove her nearly 80 miles from London to Woodland near Dover in Kent. The duration of this journey, approximately 2.5 hours, reveals the calculated nature of his crime and the extended period of terror Sarah endured. Phone evidence and CCTV tracking showed that Sarah was alive during the journey, meaning she experienced hours of fear and captivity while Couzens transported her to the location where he would ultimately kill her. The psychological torture of this extended abduction adds another layer of cruelty to his crimes. Forensic analysis of Couzens' movements that night revealed he had prepared the murder location in advance, suggesting this wasn't his first time using the area for criminal purposes. His familiarity with the remote Woodland location and escape routes indicated planning and possibly prior experience. In Woodland near Dover, Wayne Couzens raped and murdered Sarah Everard before burning her body in an attempt to destroy evidence. The brutality of his crimes reflected not just individual depravity but the power dynamics that police authority had given him over his victim. Forensic pathology revealed that Sarah had been strangled with Couzens' police belt, the same piece of equipment that symbolized his authority to protect and serve. The symbolism is devastating. The tools meant to uphold justice became instruments of torture and murder. Couzens' attempt to burn Sarah's body revealed his understanding of forensic investigation techniques, likely gained through his police training. He used knowledge acquired as a law enforcement officer to try to evade the same investigative techniques his colleagues would use to solve the crime. After murdering Sarah, Couzens returned to his normal police duties, attending work shifts and interacting with colleagues as if nothing had happened. This behavior demonstrates the compartmentalization ability that allows predators to maintain professional facades while committing horrific crimes. When Sarah was reported missing and the investigation began, Couzens participated in the search efforts, even volunteering information about his movements that night. His willingness to engage with the investigation revealed his confidence that his police status would protect him from suspicion. Couzens' behavior during the investigation was consistent with what forensic psychologists call hiding in plain sight, using professional credibility to deflect suspicion while maintaining access to information about the investigation's progress. When Sarah Everard failed to arrive home on March 3rd and didn't respond to calls from her boyfriend, her disappearance triggered a missing person investigation that would ultimately expose the darkest corners of police culture in Britain. Sarah's disappearance immediately attracted media attention, partly because her case represented every woman's worst nightmare, vanishing while taking basic precautions during a routine journey. The public response revealed the collective trauma that women experience living with constant awareness of male violence. The Metropolitan Police investigation initially followed standard missing person protocols, but the discovery of Sarah's belongings and CCTV evidence quickly escalated the case to a murder investigation. What they discovered would shatter public trust in law enforcement. CCTV analysis revealed that Sarah had been abducted by someone in a car, and traffic cameras tracked the vehicle's movements across London and into Kent. When investigators traced the rental car, they discovered it had been hired by Wayne Couzens. The revelation that a serving Metropolitan Police officer was the prime suspect in Sarah's murder sent shockwaves through the investigation team. Officers found themselves investigating one of their own colleagues for the rape and murder of a woman who should have been under their protection. Forensic evidence from Couzens' police equipment, including DNA evidence on his handcuffs and belt, provided irrefutable proof of his crimes. The very tools of law enforcement had become evidence in a murder case against a police officer. As evidence mounted against Couzens, the Metropolitan Police faced uncomfortable questions about how a predator had been recruited, trained, and armed by their institution. Internal investigations revealed systematic failures that had enabled his crimes. The discovery that colleagues had nicknamed Couzens the Rapist exposed a culture where sexual predation was treated as entertainment rather than grounds for investigation. Officers who had witnessed concerning behavior faced scrutiny for their failure to report or intervene. Most damaging was the revelation that the Parliamentary and Diplomatic Protection Command, supposedly the most elite unit in British policing, had failed to identify and remove a sexual predator from positions of authority and access. Wayne Couzens' decision to plead guilty to kidnapping, rape, and murder prevented a full trial that might have exposed more details about institutional failures within the Metropolitan Police. His plea deal served both his interests and those of the police force seeking to limit public examination of their failures. The guilty plea meant that evidence about police culture, supervision failures, and institutional negligence wasn't presented in open court. The public was denied a full accounting of how the Metropolitan Police had enabled Sarah's murder through their recruitment and oversight of Couzens. Mr. Justice Fulford sentenced Wayne Couzens to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, a whole life order that ensures he will never be released. The sentence reflected both the severity of his crimes and the abuse of public trust that made them possible. During sentencing, Justice Fulford specifically addressed Couzens' abuse of police powers, stating that his use of warrant card and handcuffs to facilitate kidnapping represented a fundamental betrayal of public trust that warranted the harshest possible penalty. Sarah's family delivered victim impact statements that captured not just their personal loss but the broader damage that Couzens had inflicted on society's relationship with law enforcement. Their words highlighted how his crimes had made every woman less safe and every police interaction more frightening. Sarah Everard's murder opened floodgates of revelation about predatory behavior within British policing. The case emboldened other victims to come forward and exposed a culture of sexual misconduct that extended far beyond one individual officer. The Parliamentary and Diplomatic Protection Command, Couzens unit, faced particular scrutiny when it was revealed that another officer, David Carrick, had been committing serial rapes for over a decade while serving in the same elite unit. The pattern suggested systematic rather than individual failure. Internal investigations revealed that sexual misconduct complaints against police officers were routinely minimized, dismissed, or handled through informal disciplinary processes that protected offenders while silencing victims. The institutional response prioritized reputation over public safety. Following Sarah's murder, the Metropolitan Police announced various reforms including enhanced vetting procedures, improved complaint handling, and cultural change initiatives. But these reforms represented acknowledgement of failures that should never have been allowed to develop. The College of Policing issued new guidance on police conduct and professional standards, but critics pointed out that existing standards should already have prevented officers like Couzens from remaining in service. The problem wasn't lack of rules, it was lack of enforcement. Most significantly, Sarah's murder led to calls for fundamental changes in how police officers are recruited, supervised, and held accountable for their conduct. But implementation of meaningful reform remains slow and incomplete. Sarah Everard's murder by a serving police officer has permanently altered the relationship between law enforcement and the public they serve. Women across Britain now approach police interactions with fear rather than confidence, understanding that a badge and warrant card can be weapons rather than protection. The institutional failures that enabled Wayne Couzens to murder Sarah continue to resonate through British policing. Each new revelation of misconduct, each dismissed complaint, each protected predator reinforces the lesson that the system prioritizes self-preservation over public safety. Sarah Everard's memory deserves more than flowers and vigils. It demands institutional transformation that ensures no other woman dies because police departments armed her killer. Her legacy should be measured not in symbolic gestures but in meaningful reforms that protect future victims from predators hiding behind badges. The most fitting memorial to Sarah Everard would be a police service that actually protects women rather than enabling their attackers. Until that transformation occurs, her murder remains not just a personal tragedy but an institutional indictment that demands ongoing accountability and reform. Wayne Couzens didn't just murder Sarah Everard, he murdered public trust in the very concept of law enforcement as protection rather than predation. Rebuilding that trust requires acknowledging the institutional failures that made her death possible and implementing reforms that ensure it never happens again.